studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
26th of October 2022. Good morning, Uganda. Wednesday, midweek. Now, I don't know whether it's a midweek of joy or of happiness that we are yet to establish. And if it's not there, well, clearly here on Good Morning Uganda, we ensure that we create that joy. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Philomena Mastiko. The whole house is in. I'm talking about Felix Nkunda, Mollen, Kenyena, and Robert Kirabo. Well, Uganda over here, clearly we're still in the struggle for Ebola, and we are really trying to make sure that we position ourselves to be able to fight it. I love the fact that the Ministry of Health between yesterday and now has been able to pass out quite a lot of information. Now, just in case you have not yet accessed it, make sure that you look for it in this day, age and era. For a person who is on social media, you can always look out for the Ministry of Health handle and get yourselves information. But just because you get the information, it does not necessarily mean that you ignore it. Put it into practice. And when it comes to cholera, well, it is really taking up Kenya and very many other African countries, according to the reports that are coming in from the World Health Organization. Clearly, this is also seeming to be a problem, starting, of course, up from the roots. Now, what is the way forward? That is also up for discussion. But first things first. Good morning, Robert. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm awesome. I'm very fine.
Okay.
I thank God for the gift of life. It is a Wednesday, and see how far the Lord has brought us. The month is almost coming to an end.
Oh, yes.
And by faith, I see that I've come to the end of the month. So there's so much to be grateful for the gift of life, but also a lot is happening in our country. And more so sometimes when certain things happen, and I feel they would have been preventable in one way or the other, but because authorities are dilly-dallying and either it's corruption or what, they don't pay attention to be proactive. Now, when these things happen, we see them all over, speaking, talking, sounding warnings, we can't tolerate this or the other. And sometimes I feel very bad. Now, when we saw what happened at Salama School for the Deaf and Blind, where we saw a number of people there perish in a fire, and I've been listening to official one by one, making all sorts of talk, you know. 11 have died, 6 are critically injured. We cannot continue seeing schools operate like this. We cannot do this. And I'm like, hey, pardon us. Since the Budo Inferno, where we saw about 20 perish in the fire, you came out with guidelines, you know? You came out, you talked just this year again. If you remember, between January and June, about 40 fires were registered. We saw them talk and say and promise even on earth how they are going to close schools. None was closed. What could have been preventable consumed a life, and we don't know what could happen. So there's some of the things that really I feel, as a Ugandan, really hurt me. We should not have what I call preventable death, you know, that if we did this and this death could be avoided. To me, that's what I find a problem, that we should stop losing people due to preventable death. Either in accidents where hospitals are not facilitated, either where, so we need to say, yes, death has occurred, but it has been an act of God, not negligence, not complacency, not anything like that.
Well, one thing I strongly believe in is that our actions do have repercussions. When you look at the people in positions that are meant to make sure that they prevent tragedies like this, you know, if you relax, if there is a laxity, if there is complacency, if there is laziness, you know, if there is incompetence, all these do have repercussions. And sadly or unfortunately for us, these repercussions really affect the people who ideally are supposed to be the beneficiaries of the competence of these administrators. Well, again, we are going to be looking more into this fire and very many other factors that could have led to it, and where have we gone wrong. Again, we'll keep having these conversations, whether you like it or not, to spot out who is not doing their part in all this trail. Good morning, Mollen.
It's a very good morning to you, Philomena, and of course I want to say good morning to your family. And yes, it is very sad actually. Robert is talking about all these fires that have been happening in the past. Now I say we shouldn't be pointing fingers at this time. I don't think it is helpful. However, we still have to talk about where we're going wrong in order to find solutions, because we cannot keep saying, you know what, maybe government should intervene, maybe administration, maybe what. What are you doing as a school or as an administrator in a certain school to make sure that some of these fires actually do not take people's lives? And I think this is where that schools have not been focusing. Taking students through these fire drills. Do they even know where their exit, doors in case of a fire? Those are things that we even talked about earlier, and we're still talking about. Make sure that everyone who is in school knows what to do in case of a fire. But the problem is that Ugandans will wait for an incident to happen and then say what could have been done. How about you do it before? So my suggestion is, if you're a school, if you're an administrator right there, make sure that students are taken through fire drills, at least the places that they sleep in. Make sure you tell them, in case of a fire, this is what you do. Because you look at this unfortunate event, these are blind people, but they don't know what to do in case of a fire. It means that prior to that, they did not know that in case of that instance, what do we do? And I had some of the people who survived trying to explain. Some of them just, their instinct, and fortunately they hit the door and they were able to run away. But in case they have in mind that, this is the route to take in case of a fire, they will do that. And now we have actually structured buildings that have come up, new buildings that have exit strategies. But it's important that people that live in those buildings are aware, or even have fire extinguishers around the school, such that in the emergency, you don't have to wait on the fire brigade or calling police. At least the administrators right there, the wardens, are able to help out the students. I think these are things that we should be focusing on in terms of solution, and that way we can avoid death and all this destruction. But otherwise, it's a very sad situation, and I hope that everyone can do their role to make sure that we serve these kids.
And also looking at these sad occurrences, it makes me wonder. Now, this is a school that had people with disabilities, and I'm trying to, figure out whether the people who are supposed to be doing all the drills and all this necessary training, is there any special arrangement that have been made to education institutions that have children with disabilities? Because again, that is a reality, a harsh reality we have to put into consideration.
Now everyone has to open their eyes and make sure that, these schools probably need special attention in cases like that. And unfortunately, you see, the school was actually about to host the Princess Royal, Princess Anne. But you also see that even when you're getting all this help and some of the things are not addressed, it's not helpful. So I think it's an eye-opener actually for schools with such kids that need attention. Absolutely. To open their eyes and make sure they have some of these strategies faster than even the ones that are much better off.
There you go. Good morning, Felix.
Good morning, Philo.
How are you doing?
Awesome. How are you?
I'm all right.
How's
great.
Wednesday? My
Wednesday is great. It's amazing. It has started off on a much better note, at least better than yesterday. I must say.
It is a good day. We hope that it's going to be much better as we do go ahead. But you guys were talking about fire outbreaks. It's sad that are very vulnerable children perish. And such children are entirely our responsibility as a community, as head teachers, as local leadership. So I think we must do more to protect these little ones. And generally in society, I think we are known to people who take lots of caution as Ugandans. We're normally impulsive in terms of events, that when something happens, we'll drum all these sounds of scary, we are, all these things. But a few days after, we already forgotten. The
consistency for us, the inconsistency is our thing.
It's terrible. But I think we also need to gear up from the side of the police and the ministry in continuous checks of these schools, finding out how compliant they are in terms of these requirements to avoid such fires. And sometimes also I think we need to do a lot to find out the causes And this is what everyone is saying. We never get the reports of the various fires we have heard of. Maybe those would have helped to understand some of the causes of these challenges in schools.
Well, I mean, again, that has been Robert's rant. You know, they will tell you we are launching an investigation into this. However, when you try to make a follow-up, it disappears somewhere in there until the next occurrence of the same making or of the same nature.
They have had successful investigations. For example, most of the fires that happened between January and June, this very police was able with other experts to carry out investigations and find out what the causes of the fires were. But you'll find that about actually out of the 40 fires that were registered, 25 of these fires were a result of arson. And arson, that means someone set ablaze this school. And one of the reasons for arson was that is wrangles between administration, school administrations, land wrangles, people that have been working in these schools and maybe they have been chased, or some schools sharing, you see some have 3-4 directors and all that. So there have been investigations.
Administration intrigue.
Yeah, and you find that however, there are those that have never come up with reports. For example, the Budo Infano, since that is the 14th of April 2008 till date, they have failed to come up with a report. They give various reasons. The scene was contaminated, the dormitories were burnt beyond, so we've not had a report for Budo. No wonder the parents of these children that perished are in court till today. They're saying, well, we need justice, we need compensation and all that. But to me, I believe, and much as my sister said, we shouldn't point fingers. You see, when we run away from holding people accountable and responsible, then this continues. School fires in Uganda are no longer a new thing. The world woke up to a shock when we had 20 perish in the Budo Inferno. But I want to tell you, over then, we've lost over hundreds people. We've had over 200 fire incidents in schools. So that is not new. You know, it is something we've lived with. Remember when it just opened, COVID, when schools resumed. Fires for about 2 weeks became fires. We had that in Kawempe. So this is not a new thing. And I believe we can no longer say that let's look at responsibility. When you have a watchman at your home, when you have an askari, maybe they lose an arrow, and something goes missing, there's someone you hold accountable.
Absolutely.
How did this break-in happen? You know, if you have CCTV cameras, you rush to them and you look and see. So most of these happenings, I hold them on the ministry's failure to implement guidelines, failure to ensure that they do what they're supposed to do. Because for private sector, it's maximization of profits. The more I save on certain things, the more I make more profits. Yet they should be there. So is the watchdog.
Well, and the statistics actually show that most of these fires, they happen in the private schools. And the question here is why? What is not being done in private schools that is done in public schools? And anyway, much later on, I would love to know, after all these reports, at least the ones that we have seen that have come out, what lessons are being taken away from that and what have they helped? Because the fact that we're still witnessing fires like this, it makes us feel like we are becoming comfortable with this tragedy. Now that would be very, very upside for us as a country. Well, we'll be getting into that later on in the newsreel, but for now, we'll be going through some of our stories locally and international to see what's happening around you.
And we'll begin off with issues regarding land, where we see the Vice President, Jessica Alupo, has said Uganda has made progress in documenting tenure rights through massive land titling initiatives under the Maya land. She was officiating at a conference on the effective land management, climate change and other land-related issues affecting the region, organized by the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, and the International Development Law Organization, IDO, in Nyonyintono.
Now, police has also urged relatives of the victims of the last night's fire at Salama School of the Blind and Deaf to be patient as it conducts DNA in order to ascertain the real identities of the deceased. According to police, 11 victims of the fire were burnt beyond recognition, Meanwhile, government has promised to support the deceased relatives, meet burial expenses, and restore the destroyed infrastructure.
And moving on, Uganda Land Commission has once again failed to explain the queries on the alleged mismanagement of Uganda police land in Naguru. According to commission members, some of the documents which could have explained some of the queries were hidden by the suspended members of the commission. The land in question was in 2011 leased to the United Nations African Institute for the Prevention of Crime and Treatment of Offenders for 99 years, but Uganda Land Commission subleased the land in 2015. In a statement to the committee, the Acting Secretary General of the Uganda Land Commission, Andrew Nyumba, said they could not trace any record pertaining the sublease transaction between Unifree and Future Group. He said the file for Unifree has not been traced, leaving MPs on the committee wondering what could have happened to the documents. Ugandan Commission members disclosed that it could have been the suspended members of the commission that took off with the missing documents.
Now, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Norbert Mao, has advised the Choli community to unite if they are to develop their own region. Mao, who is also the President General of the Democratic Party, says unity must start with his own tribe. This was during a meeting he addressed in Gulu City that also attracted area leaders and members of local community. The Gulu City resident official commissioner Jane Francis Okili explained to witness everlasting unity among the Acholi leaders, politicians must learn to embrace government programs for the development of the region.
Now, moving on to the international stories, Rishi Sunak has appointed his team of top ministers on his first day as the UK's Prime Minister. Now, in a key speech outside Number 10, he said he wanted to bring the country and party together, promising economic stability and confidence. The cabinet reshuffle saw some predictable choices and some that have surprised MPs. Unity, experience and continuity in some really key roles are the themes Number 10 say they wanted to convey. So what can we read into who is staying, who is going, and what it all means? Number 10's message is echoed by the former Director of Communications for David Cameron, Sir Craig Oliver, who said unity is the watchword of this reshuffle. It's clear each part of the party will feel represented in some way. Now, moving on to clothing giant Adidas has cut ties with rapper Ye, known as Kanye West, saying it does not tolerate anti-Semitism and any other sort of hate speech. Adidas's Yeezy brand collaboration with Mr. West was put under review after he showed a White Lives Matter t-shirt design at Paris Fashion Week. Days later, the rapper posted anti-Semitic comments on his Twitter account. His products will be pulled from sale with immediate effect, said Adidas. The sportswear brand was previously said the Yeezy brand collaboration with Ye was one of the most successful in the company's history. Cutting the partnership means Adidas will make a net loss of £217 million in 2022 as a result, it said. Ye had previously accused Adidas of stealing his designs in a now deleted Instagram post.
Away from that, Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, has revealed that her mixed race heritage includes being 43% Nigerian. Now, in a new episode of her Spotify exclusive podcast, Archetypes, Meghan Markle told Nigerian-American actor Ziwe that she discovered her roots after having her genealogy done a couple of years ago. Asked if she knew which tribe her ancestors were from, the Duchess did not, but is planning to start to dig deeper into all this. Meghan has previously spoken about being biracial, and her mother is African-American, her father is Caucasian, but did not delve deeper into her roots until more recently. In climate news, why the COP27 Climate Summit matters for the planet. Now, world leaders are set to discuss action to tackle climate change at the UN Climate Summit in Egypt. UN climate summits are held every year for governments to agree on steps to limit global temperature rises. They are referred to as COPs, which stands for Conference of Parties. The parties are attending countries that signed up to the original UN climate agreement in 1992. Now, COP27 is the 27th annual UN meeting on climate, and it will take place in Sharm el-Sheikh from the 60th to the 18th of November this year. The world is warming because of the emissions produced by humans, mostly from burning fossil fuels like oil, gas, and coal. Global temperatures have risen 1.1 degrees Celsius and are heading towards 1.5 degrees Celsius, according to UN's climate scientists, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. If temperatures rise to 1.7 degrees Celsius to 1.8 degrees Celsius above the 1850s level, the IPCC estimates that half of the world's population could be exposed to life-threatening heat and humidity. To prevent this, 194 countries signed the Paris Agreement in 2015, pledging to pursue efforts to limit global temperature rises to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Well, before we get into our health beat for the morning, on a lighter note, I did come across a story where the world's dirtiest man, a man who had spent about 50 years without taking a shower, that is Amu Haji, actually passed on in Iran. But you see, what was going through my head is 50 years. How is that even possible, right? I would really want to hear from these people here. And like yesterday, how you were emphasizing honesty, Robert. I know that during your childhood days, there were those days when you just didn't want to hit the showers. It was very problematic. You were problematic for the parents. And I don't know how long did it go for you without showering back in the day when you're still a baby or a child or a toddler?
Well, when you're a child, you have no options. I must be very honest.
You wouldn't dodge it?
How?
Well,
You know, sandals, those days they had used to call them sapato. Was it butter? My friend. There was that time that you have to bathe.
Yes.
And either the housemaid is there to help you, or you and your juniors. The question would have been, was it proper bathing? That could be the...
For as long as you had water, get in contact with your skin,
those days
that was considered a shower.
Find ways of, you come, you pour water on your feet as well. And then, but should you be discovered that either your back is dry or
watery,
my friend, you would get even marks of that sapato. So, but you see, the most stage where people don't bathe is not when they are children.
Ah,
no.
Tell me more.
It is there is someone who will watch over you. Your mother is there, the housemaid is there now.
Yes.
For the male flock, you talked about honesty. Boarding school, when HSC, there are candidate classes, senior 4.
Yes.
Because when primary bathing is almost, but that is when the bathing habit. Now when they get to campus, the habit grows a bit. Some, when they are still bachelors, and these perfumes, roll-ons and all that.
Yes.
Those guys that, where people go for weekend bufumbo, those guys rarely shower, you know? And it is when they are coming into, it's when they come into marriage. And one of the things, if you have, you know, these evening classes, the male talk, where you're taking a beer or what, when a man is getting married, one of the advices you're giving is katino gendo nabanga buli lunaku, because you're not going to go in that bed when you've not showered.
Wow.
So this is the realities.
Okay.
Yeah. Bathing, men's system of bathing, most bachelors, even in the corporate world, most bachelors with these perfumes and what, those guys don't shower on a daily basis. And I know you're being honest and you're watching. It's when they are going too much. And one of the hard things they find to adjust is showering. Because it is mandatory. You want to go into this bed when you've not showered. I rest my case.
Well, clearly, if you are a culprit, you should be shamed. You need to be shamed and do the needful.
People having SCs in the car everywhere.
Anyway.
Oh, that experience, I feel like Robert must have been covering something. He should have been one of the culprits that avoided bathing. But also, Philomena, it begs the question, this man who died, I think the cause of death could have been his condition of not bathing for all that years. He must have died from all that dirtiness. I am thinking so.
50 years without taking a shower. I don't know how that works out, but again, we are different people, and clearly we can endure different situations. Robert, speaking of situations, when it comes to the health situation, what are you telling us this morning?
Well, the advice I'm giving you, you must bathe to be able to see it effectively work. Therefore, not bathing, these don't boost immune system for people who don't bathe. So first I have hallelujah banana juice, hallelujah ginger tea, and hallelujah tamarind drink. These boost your immune system. They empower your body to be able to fight off a number of diseases. So what you have to do is take them regularly, just 1,500. Any of these bottles, and I guarantee you will make a lot of savings, because you must understand we are at a time when you need every penny, and it's not okay for you to spend on treatment. First, your health is compromised, you're sick, you're not productive, but also you're spending on preventable expenditures. So just try this. I guarantee you, you really take my advice and it will benefit you.
If you can prevent it, then why wouldn't you do it? It's Good Morning Uganda Wednesday. We're going in for one of our inspirational songs from one of the greatest women you've ever come across. When we get back, we'll be talking more about fires in schools, of course, in regards to what just happened recently over there in Salama at the School of the Blind. We'll be getting into that and many, many more discussions. And of course, we'd love for you to be part of it. Get onto our socials. The hashtag is UBCGMU, and let us know what you think. Good Morning Uganda returns shortly.
Live Morning Uganda.
of October 2022. Good morning, Uganda. Wednesday, midweek. Now, I don't know whether it's a midweek of joy or of happiness that we are yet to establish. And if it's not there, well, clearly here on Good Morning Uganda, we ensure that we create that joy. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Philomena Mastiko. The whole house is in. I'm talking about Felix Nkunda, Mollen, Kenyena, and Robert Kirabo. Well, Uganda over here, clearly we're still in the struggle for Ebola, and we are really trying to make sure that we position ourselves to be able to fight it. I love the fact that Ministry of Health between yesterday and now has been able to pass out quite a lot of information. Now, just in case you have not yet accessed it, make sure that you look for it in this day, age and era. For a person who is on social media, you can always look out for the Ministry of Health handle and get yourselves information. But just because you get the information, it does not necessarily mean that you ignore it. Put it into practice. And when it comes to cholera, well, it is really taking up Kenya and very many other African countries, according to the reports that are coming in from the World Health Organization. Clearly, this is also seeming to be a problem, starting, of course, up from the roots. Now, what is the way forward? That is also up for discussion. But first things first. Good morning, Robert. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm awesome. I'm very fine.
Okay.
I thank God for the gift of life. It is a Wednesday, and see how far the Lord has brought us. The month is almost coming to an end.
Oh, yes.
And by faith, I see that I've come to the end of the month. So there's so much to be grateful for the gift of life. But also, a lot is happening in our country. And more so sometimes when certain things happen. And I feel they would have been preventable in one way or the other. But because authorities are dilly-dallying, and either it's corruption or what, they don't pay attention to be proactive. Now, when these things happen, we see them all over, speaking, talking, sounding warnings, we can't tolerate this or the other. And sometimes I feel very bad. Now, when we saw what happened at Salama School for the Deaf and Blind, where we saw a number of people there perishing in a fire, and I've been listening to official one by one making all sorts of talk, you know. 11 have died, 6 are critically injured. We cannot continue seeing schools operate like this. We cannot do this. And I'm like, hey, pardon us. Since the Budo Inferno, where we saw about 20 perish in the fire, you came out with guidelines, you know. You came out, you talked just this year again. If you remember, between January and June, about 40 fires were registered. We saw them talk and say and promise heaven on earth how they are going to close schools. None was closed. What could have been preventable consumed a life, and we don't know what could happen. So there's some of the things that really I feel, as a Ugandan, really hurt me. We should not have what I call preventable death, you know, that if we did this and this death could be avoided. To me, that's what I find a problem, that we should stop losing people due to preventable death. Either in accidents where hospitals are not facilitated, either where, so we need to say, yes, death has occurred, but it has been an act of God, not negligency, not complacency, not anything like that.
Well, one thing I strongly believe in is that our actions do have repercussions. When you look at the people in positions that are meant to make sure that they prevent tragedies like this, you know, if you relax, if there is a laxity, if there is complacency, if there is laziness, you know, if there is incompetence, all these do have repercussions. And sadly or unfortunately for us, these repercussions really affect the people who ideally are supposed to be the beneficiaries of the competence of these administrators. Well, again, we're going to be looking more into this fire and very many other factors that could have led to it, and where have we gone wrong. Again, we'll keep having these conversations, whether you like it or not, to spot out who is not doing their part in all this trail. Good morning, Mollen.
It's a very good morning to you, Philomena, and of course I want to say good morning to your family. And yes, it is very sad actually. Robert is talking about all these fires that have been happening in the past. Now, I say we shouldn't be pointing fingers at this time. I don't think it is helpful. However, we still have to talk about where we're going wrong in order to find solutions, because we cannot keep saying, you know what, maybe government should intervene, maybe administration, maybe what. What are you doing as a school or as an administrator in a certain school to make sure that some of these fires actually do not take people's lives? And I
mean, somebody must be there to hold everybody accountable.
Every Wednesday at 10 p.m.
First of all, we as elites of Uganda we have made Museveni the issue. I can tell Museveni is not the problem of Uganda. The problems of Uganda are much deeper. We can change the next 20 presidents and we'll still be this roundabout.
Was brought to you by.
Simply make a small deposit of 99k and pay the balance mpola. You can pay in daily, weekly, or even monthly installments while you enjoy your new phone. So what are you doing today? Visit any MTN shop near you and get the MTN cupboard. That's super easy.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
It's a great morning here on UBC TV, and you're watching Good Morning Uganda, coming to you live from Nile Avenue. And my name is Philomena Mastiko. Once again, I am in the company of the two gentlemen, Felix Nkunda, Robert Kirabo, Nyonyintono. Welcome to this segment of discussion about the news that is happening around us. Now, one of the stories that has been on almost every Ugandan mouth for the last 24 hours, it is the fire that happened to the Salama School of the Blind People, and sadly, we did lose a couple of lives. We did lose about 9 people. Now, this is a school that has children between the ages of 6 to 25 and was established back in 1999. And also, right from the observations that we made after this tragedy, the members of the community did have quite a number of students over there. Now, aside from, you know, the social torture here, there is a lot to be discussed. Why is this happening? Now, in light of that, we have previously had such occurrences, and I think, if my memory serves me right, the very first occurrence that actually brought Ugandans on the alert and, you know, to watch and see and observe and, you know, take into notice was the fire that gutted Budo Junior School. Now, from then, statistics kept increasing, and I can tell you that in the year of 2008, we had about 19 elementary school students that were killed in a nighttime fire outbreak at a boarding school. Now, even after that, looking at this year alone, the first half of this year, we did have very many school fires in all these schools. Now, also there was a report that did point out that most of these fire outbreaks do happen in private schools. Again, now here is where the problem is. People are questioning, with all the money that we put into private schools, you would believe that the administrations in the schools have done all that it takes to make sure that our children are safe. Because as a parent, if I take my child to a school, if they are reporting for a term, I expect to have my child back healthy, doing well, because I have done all that I can. I have done all that is expected of me. If I have asked for the fees, for the tuition, for requirements, I have fully provided. So I would definitely want to see my child back at home safe. But sadly, this is not a story that can be told by parents who have had some of these children who have passed on due to all these school fire outbreaks. And our discussion this morning is going to be around that. And you can get onto our Twitter. The hashtag is UBCGMU, and let's have a conversation between ourselves and you. Let us know, as a parent, as a Ugandan, as a concerned citizen, where is it all going wrong and what should be done? And maybe just to hear from you, Robert, with all these statistics, and I did ask you earlier on, because this is what I wanted to know. We have seen all these occurrences, so you would think we have learned better. Okay, we have seen police try to investigate some of these fires. They have maybe fortunately come up with some reports on some of the incidences, while the others, it's still a bit sketchy. We haven't gotten reports. But even the few reports that we have received, Robert, you would think that there is a lesson or two that we could pick. But the fact that we are still seeing tragedies like this, what's happening?
First, we've had a number of fires. This was at Salama School for the Blind.
Yes.
That is along Salama Road. And the director is Francis Kinubi, who is also a person who has a problem with sight, vision. So it is Salama School of the Blind.
Yes.
That's where the fire happened the previous night. Now, Francis Kinubi, those that know him, is a person who advocates for the rights of persons with disability, and he was once the chairperson of NUDIPU, that is a National Union of Persons with Disability. Now, you've asked why such incidents continue to happen. First, I want to allow me have a few minutes and give a background why we see fires right from the Budo, that happened on the 14th of April 2009 till today, where we've seen so many fires, to the Salama School for the Blind fire that happened on Salama Road just yesterday. Now, one, when we talk about our education system, I've always said, and I'll repeat to say this, that the day we decided to commercialize education is where the problem began.
Yeah.
You see, first, what we had, education in this country was brought by either missionaries and our brothers from the Muslim side. Now I mean of Catholics and I mean of the religious. That is how education was brought in Uganda by our colonial masters. They had an intent to have people who would help them administrate their colonial or their protectorate better. So it wasn't out of business to begin with. These schools were built to educate people. Then after we had these, that's why you have the Gayas, where we had daughters of Abami, you know.
Yes.
We have Budo King's College, where sons, kings of the privileged would go. Then later we had what we called community schools. Community schools were not aiming at making profits. Their aim was a Felix Nkunda, wherever he comes from, either his parents were so close to the Catholic Church, so somehow Felix was picked, you know, from the village, educated, he went abroad, you know.
Yes.
So Felix comes back, he appreciates the value of education. Felix meets Robert, who was maybe his father was also in church, or he had Omami wa Kabaka, so he was picked and educated. Then we meet also Philo. We are from the same locality.
Yes.
Because we appreciate the value of education, we begin what they used to call community school, to educate the community. Nothing like profit. You get it? Nothing like profit, but value to educate. Now what happened? Then we came to a time where anybody who had money would begin a school. Because I want to tell you, there are no requirements in this country that vet who starts a school.
Yes.
A fisherman, Omukubi Wenkasi, who has never gone to school, can start a school as long as he can employ people who can do so. Now, the aim, and the people saw that today you're in a small place like this, 3-4 rooms. You go to the bank, you get a loan. But the rotation of 5 years, you have a magnificent building, you have a school. Schools became one of the profitable businesses because the bank would just require your land title. They see you have children, you have students, they give you a loan.
Yes.
Now, when we went into this commercialization of education, that is where these problems began. That now, because it was a money venture, it made it a money venture with no proper, and I want to be very clear, there wasn't any proper will and determination to regulate this sector properly. So, it is like for us who are farmers, you have your goats, or you have, and you just, local chicken, and you just let them out. Your neighbor has beans, they are going to go and mess the entire place. So, private schools were let to operate with the minimal guidelines and few or less supervision and monitoring.
Yes.
This is where trouble came from. When you look at the fires that we had from January this very year to July, it was confirmed, that is by George Muteka, it's Assistant Commissioner, Minister of Education, that after police carried out the investigations, out of the 40 fires, it was discovered that 25 of these fires were a result of arson. And arson meaning that someone set a fire, but because of administrative wrangles and misallocation or no conflict here and there. What do I mean? You asked, why do we see private schools mostly?
Yes.
That because there are no proper systems, one, by government itself, because they license you to have a school.
Yes.
Most of these schools, we've not seen the ministry come and say they don't have a license. For Salama School of the Blind, one, this never had a license to be a boarding school. It didn't. It didn't meet the requirements to be a boarding school. It was supposed to be a day school. That is one.
Yeah.
When my friend Honorable Moriko Kaduchi reached there and said, but you see, however, I want to go into that. So, that alone, that the ministry have school inspectors, who cease to be inspectors, by the way, many of them, because today a school inspector announces they arrive. And you prepare yourself, inspector is coming next week.
For just the aesthetics, you do the basics.
Previously, a school inspector would just land at a school. Today they will tell you, we're expecting an inspector, and when they come, they move around, then end at the headmaster's office. And the director is there on that particular day. Then they would move out with a khaki envelope. No inspection. You've been waiting for this person, he has moved around, he's gotten his khaki envelope, he has gone. What report is he going to make? So when you have this commercialization, private schools, what ministry must do is to have stringent, tight, determined, patriotic inspectors. I would ask you, how did this school be if it wasn't licensed to be a boarding school? for the ministry, because you're not, I don't want even to blame the private sector, much as they have our children and they have responsibility, because I know how business operates. You see, a businessman, a person who began a school, not a community school, not a religious school, a person who began a school with the aim of making profits. These requirements that the ministry put in place, let me just take you briefly through them. No burglar proofing in dormitory windows, that is okay. Do not congest dormitories. If this is my dormitory, and the ministry says it can accommodate 20 pupils, and for me I know if I use my techniques I can have 40, double the number, wouldn't I feel? Because I'm not going to tell students, Tinzi I can't accommodate you. Yet this is profits. I have a loan that I have to service. So congestion will be there, not triple-decker beds in dormitories. Move around our schools today.
Actually, most schools don't even allow parents to access
go to the
dormitories because
so,
they know the chaos that's there.
Have trained fire wardens among staff and students. Let me tell you, if I want to maximize profit, would I go for this? Then avail visitors to have proper identification, should not enter, okay, that dormitory, but then dormitories should be locked and a guard, listen to this fellow, when students are in classes. That means you're employing someone. That goes on your profits. Build high perimeter fences to prevent illegal entry and exit. If I have a school, the money I'm going to spend on building a wall fence, construction, I would like to maximize that. Install CCTV cameras, alarm, fire detection systems. How many schools will do this?
Yes.
It is upon the government to force this to happen. Have firefighting equipment available. These are the minimum guidelines for a boarding school. And automatically, if you sit and relax and say, we gave these guidelines to these people, so they must have them in place, definitely any of the things I've mentioned, neglecting it much as it has a danger to the school, is maximization of profit. To me, who is owning this school, so the watchdog, which is government, which is Ministry of Education, therefore should up its game to ensure that these are in place. Even when they have these guidelines from the Abudo 2008, I remember it was General Kaleka who was the Inspector General of Police by then.
Yes.
They sat with the ministry, they drafted these guidelines, but we only remember them when there has been a fire. What can we do when the role of government, protect people. The role of police, which is a government, is protect life and property. So I'm not going to look at the Chinubis and say, but you see, even Chinubi had these guidelines. Hey, Mary, help us. How do you want to tell me a man who wants to see the people with visual impairment educated, looking for funding here and there, will look at these gaps and look at how they tighten them? It is government.
Now, looking at, again, the statistics, the police report that came out earlier this year, I think it was about March, it showed that there had been about 18 fire incidents in just a span of 3 months. Now, again, according to other reports that have been coming out, rescue efforts specifically have been hampered by a couple of reasons. But there are some universal reasons here, which, again, where I want to draw my focus. One is that most of these fires have been attributed to poor electrical connections in most of these schools. Then the other one that is also a bit universal amongst all these fire outbreaks in the schools that we have witnessed is that there is usually a lot of intrigue when it comes to administration, especially in private schools. Now, these are just some of the reasons, but these are the most common reasons. And I mean, and this is where, Felix, maybe I'll just want to hear from you. Does this say a lot about the laxity in administrations of the schools, or do we actually put the blame to the school inspectors? Because if you come up with the same reasons every now and then, like Robert said, a school inspector will make an announcement that I'll be coming by your school like a week prior to. They come, make just basic movements over here and there, and end up in the head teacher's office and walk away with a, with an envelope or note. We don't know what happens there anyway. But where is the laxity? or maybe both parties have a blame, have a share blame, the administrations of the schools and also the school inspectors, of course, on behalf of government?
Yeah, well, of course, ascertaining the proportion of responsibility on different parties to education, government being the major stakeholder in this, given the fact that education becomes a right under our laws, Constitution of Uganda as amended 1995, you notice that that leaves government in the main seat in terms of administration and availment of education in this country. Secondly, the existence and establishment of private schools is not necessarily the challenge in this event. However, in fact, if I may choose to add, the sustainability of education in this country can only be guaranteed with the presence of private schools.
Yes.
Because between you and me, they contribute more than 50% to the academic sector in this country, both at tertiary and later on at earlier stages. Now, this issue of fires, it's very sad to start with. You can imagine these young people who sometimes are very much even helpless, being gutted in fire. But when these things happen consistently, they simply measure up to the various similar issues that have been happening in this country and also prove the level of laxity we have generally as a country in terms of addressing matters that are most important. This particular fire comes in a queue of many more that we don't know up till today why they have happened. All right? But the only much that we know is that we have been told investigations are underway. Had we gotten the reports of various, you see, the purpose of a report is not necessarily to incriminate government or particulars.
Yes.
But because it is well investigated and searched, it is an informative report on the other side. Maybe there's something we are missing as schools, as parents, as children or students, that if we carry out these reports, we shall be able to put together a puzzle. You understand?
Yeah.
So the fact that there's failure to have these reports presented is the continuous evidence that we are going to have this go on. Because we never established why one fire happened, why the other happened, but they're still happening, or they all actually happened.
Yes.
But if we have a comparison and say, this school, this is what happened. You see, when the minister comes out and gives out these guidelines, they are based on what? Because initially they should be based on a report. That if it happened like this, how can we do better? So what are our guidelines based on? That's the question. But secondly, education has various stakeholders. We have talked about government, the students, the schools, but also there are people they call parents. Government has no children. You have never heard that, for it generally simply comes out and says, Abana government, it has no children. I don't know which clan is government. But do you know who have children? The parents and families. How interested, how often do we question things we don't understand in these schools? On top of the fires, yesterday there was a story that was running in the news about a headmaster who defiled a 14-year or 15-year-old P7 something.
Yes.
All these things as a result of, in Uganda, it would come out much better in Uganda, like we say, okwesulirayo gwanagamba. We have completely thrown away our roles as parents in terms of schools. How can someone tell you not to go in a dormitory where your child sleeps and you all go away smiling? How? How? The question is, what are you hiding? This is my child.
I've paid fees, I've paid tuition.
It's not like you're giving me a free salad. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You're asking me to bring mattresses and blankets for what? For sale? And now these are the we are being so complacent and you know, as parents we are trying to be holy where holiness is not asked or needed. And the points when you have to be holy, we are never holy. Why are you pretending to be holy when it comes to matters of our children? You know, they are telling you, how dare does a school let your child at a day school come home at 10 p.m. and you find it normal? Now the next day that child is abducted on the way, or beaten or raped, that's when you start raising an alarm. And then
what did you do? Did you make any follow-up?
I think as parents we have not done enough to interest ourselves in things that matter in these places where we take our children. Some parents don't even know the names of the teachers. Actually, some parents don't even know the classes where they teach. They don't literally that Omananga, they go, that's their class.
Their parents I've heard asking their children, which class
are you? And now there are streams, my stream, C, B, W, Z, whatever. Who's your teacher? There must be someone responsible. There must be someone asking questions. Do we ask the questions? He talked about a school not having a license to be a boarding school. That's a big issue. But how do you find out that when your kid is dropped at the gate? When you never go for VDs, you don't interact with students, no teachers, no the administration. For you, you're just there. The only title you enjoy.
Paid fees. After paying fees, that's just about it. The requirements.
That can't be a way of life,
at the end of the term.
You know, we also need to up our game as parents. We are not interested in our students' affairs. We are never. Now we have a big challenge lately about recruiting kids into sexual sexual homosexuality, something like that, gay and what. But how alert are we? Before we know we shall have those issues, and we have them all over social media. You're seeing clips. You get the point. You see, when we look at a fire, we are only drawing attention because someone was killed, and that's very bad. We agree and we grieve with the families. But there are many fires that are happening beneath our nose because we choose to try and pretend that that is, you know, education is something you go through. But are we interested in what will protect our children? As they normally say, had a particular parent asked these questions, maybe we wouldn't be here. There is no offense in you questioning the head of the school about some of these things and making commentary or raising an alarm. The school that banned sometime after COVID, I think somewhere in Masaka, I think, the kids literally had nowhere to pass even when they're going to their daycares. The congestion. And no one is commenting about that as parents. You're happy to leave your kids. But you know, these are places, you know how quick mattresses can burn.
Yes.
You know these blankets, how quick they can catch fire. No one is talking about these things. Some things we know, other things we're not interested to know, others we know, but we choose to be quiet. I think Ugandans, I think it's a black man's thing. We are so, in Uganda we say, kwekiriranya, being complacent or something like that. Even when you see something, you act like it will pass, like we have been through it, like we normally say, we also studied like that. That's being so complacent, and the effects are what we are suffering lately. We never want to question things, even when we know them. You don't want to.
You actually know the ultimate repercussions of some of these things,
but you choose never to question.
You become very tone deaf.
Let me give you an example. Here in Kampala, if some of us who have ever been using commuter taxis or border borders, you stop a border guy, and you literally know the guy, his dress code, his appearance, the motorbike is a gutter scrub. But you go ahead too. Now, 2 minutes in the journey, maybe you fall down or the guy hits, namulabye, and you start saying, say namulabye or no, but wamulabye, and what did you do? And you went ahead to take the. So, for me, I believe government has a role, schools have a role, but the bigger role, these kids are not named, let's say this is Salama, Salama Philomena, Salama. No, these kids are your children. You're the primary protector. You're the primary custodian of whatever will happen to them.
Giving all
if
the
you
power
don't
to
ask
the
the questions, no one. Government will ask. Government has over 7,000 schools to ask questions to. You only have one school to ask questions to. Why are you not asking the questions? It's as simple as that.
Yes, Robert.
Well, Felix had a very good submission when talking about parent responsibility. But you see, it all goes back, much as parents have responsibility. How is the ministry reacting to some of these issues? There are many schools where if a parent went to a dormitory, it is indefinite suspension. You go back with your child. You see, and these happen regularly. But for me, why I go back to the principle of government. Many reports have come through. What action has been taken? Parents have complained. These fires are the few that we've gotten reports out of 40 when they tell you 25, and this is a commissioner in the Ministry of Education, George Mutekanga, saying we've investigated, police has investigated, 25 of them are a result of arson due to school wrangles. How do you interest yourself as government to ensure that this private school administration, Philo, a person is hired today, you get it, they teach for 3 months, they ask for salary, they are fired. You get it?
Yes.
They are fired. How do you, the ministry says have a board of directors, have these, do these schools have them? Because now most of the fires are a result of such poor management systems. What systems have you put in place as government, and how are you holding people accountable? How are you interested? Because these schools pay licenses, and they pay high licenses. They contribute to national growth. Felix has told you here that you can, if you remove private schools in this country, you may have a limping education system where you don't even have schools in majority of these areas. So government should take keen interest. Parents are sometimes vulnerable. I know of a school where the director said, in my school I don't want PTA. But in a sub-county,
The bit is that there's
this
an
is the
option.
only school. And it is the only school that you can look at good standard. Ministry says we are investigating. We are
Today,
going to do
Philo,
this.
as you drove here to work, how
So
many
at
schools
the end
did you
of the day,
bypass?
You know, schools go with affordability. They go with the.
You see, that's the complacence I'm talking about.
And all that.
You're put
So,
in a state to think
the
that
watchdog
it is not
is
this one.
government to come in and say, this is the yardstick, you implement it or you don't. Some of these schools give bursaries to the poor.
Well,
And this
I do
child and
believe
the parent are held at ransom.
What's the
because
benefit of being
because
poor?
of
You're losing
someone
children.
who
I
put a
do
school.
believe that every party here has quite a role to play, but of course government still being at the center of it, it is the central regulator. But also as a parent, how much interest do you take when it comes to your school, rather your child's school? How well do you know it, their management systems, you know, to avoid and make a follow-up. Don't be very comfortable. The fact that you have just dropped your child at school and you know that, well, I'm expecting this child back at home 3 months from now, that's just not enough. It's not only about fees. What's the essence of you paying the tuition and fees and you lose your child? That is again a story for another day. So responsibility is from every corner, but government obviously is also having quite a major role to play in this whole thing. Otherwise, we'll keep witnessing more fires. We'll be back with the big stories in our dailies on Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC. Objective and non-partisan.
Honorable Minister, there were a number of points. I want to start with you.
Straight from the hearts of open-minded men and women.
Money tends to move faster at night So when
people are not counting,
Don't take it for granted.
Candid and authentic.
Because Uganda is not Thailand.
that's not correct, and we should stop that kind of mentality. So what I'm saying
That's
is
a trick question. Don't answer.
I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that.
Tell him you speak Luo.
I think that's where we are beginning to have a problem.
Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial star 165 star 5 star 3 hash to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
a logical, deeper conversation.
How many teachers in Uganda did you consult? But there's a mistake we are making.
Which is good.
Which is good.
Which is good.
Which is good.
We went to this school, we ran it to Western, we ran it to Northern, we ran, then you come.
Isn't that an achievement?
Objective and non-partisan.
Honorable Minister, there were a number of points. I want to start with you.
Straight from the hearts of open-minded men and women.
Money tends to move faster at night. So when
people are not counting,
Don't take it for granted.
Candid and authentic.
Because Uganda is not Thailand.
that's not correct, and we should stop that kind of mentality. So what I'm saying
That's
is
a trick question. Don't answer.
I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that.
Tell him you speak Luo.
I think that's where we are beginning to have a problem.
I think what is going to kill the parish model are all the misconceptions on how it's supposed to run.
I know that the Prime Minister is listening.
Behind the headlines.
Charles, let us agree. We liberalized the economy.
We are several nations put it together.
Why don't you appreciate that?
What if it fails?
I'm happy
and
to
he's
answer.
a good lawyer because Amin is not in power.
The parish development committee is functional. It is there. That there is a parish chief, that the beneficiary is doing.
So we look at expenditure. We don't look at revenue. And that is the challenge we are giving them from Minister of Finance.
Your fountain of new knowledge, flowing into the mass body of knowledge.
First get the knowledge of Bukedia, how they want to be modernized.
Every Wednesday, 10 p.m. on your public broadcaster.
You return money to the treasury, which is meant for the people.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
It's better to foster respect instead of fear and pain.
Cause a good school equals a better life.
Raising voices.
The Ministry of Health informs the public that there are confirmed cases of Ebola in Uganda. We, however, urge the public not to panic as the situation is being managed. The Ministry of Health further reminds the public to be on the lookout for any persons who may show signs and symptoms of Ebola. These include high body temperature, abdominal pains, diarrhea, vomiting, bleeding from the body openings such as the nose, eyes, and mouth. Please inform the nearest health worker immediately if you see anyone with these signs and symptoms. To prevent Ebola from spreading further, please take the following preventive measures: regular washing of hands with water and soap, avoid handshaking and hugging, avoiding any contact with any suspected Ebola patients. Any person who dies suddenly should not be buried but reported to the nearest health worker or LC1 immediately. For further information, please call the Ministry of Health toll-free number on 0800-100-066 or send a free SMS to your report on 8500. This message is from the Ministry of Health with support from UNICEF and World Health Organization.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
The press review this morning, starting off with the Daily Monitor, the big story, 11 blind pupils die in a school fire. And they're giving you the details on how the fire at School of Blind started and horror survivors went through. It's all detailed in there. The brave 13-year-old who died while saving her colleagues and the UK royal family members were set to visit this same school. Now you can find this story over there, and showing you a picture over there of one of the parents to the children who were victims. Quite a lot of pain being expressed in that picture. Now, still in more news, Ebola government looking for 300 Ebola contacts in Greater Kampala. And also there is a home pullout for African heritage, so make sure that you look out for that to get more stories in the Daily Monitor this morning.
And crossing over into the New Vision, CMI takes over school fire probe. Institution was set to host a Princess Anne. That is a story on page 6 to 7. But Museveni also commissions tiles factory in Buyukwe. That is a story on page 3. And the big headline right there, Princess Anne in Uganda for 4-day visit. And Museveni calls Naduri over son's death. Much more of those stories in today's New Vision.
And looking at the sports stories, Mudola carries Lady Cranes, and they're also showing you the lineup for the Rugby African Women's Cup. Uganda yesterday was versing Zambia, and Saturday's fixture is also out, so you can always get that. And still in more local news, local pros bid to end 8-year wait for Uganda Open title. This is, of course, in the game of golf. FIFA World Cup with only 25 days to go for the FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022. There is a blessing that could be quite coming in. Belgium skipper Eden Hazard said his nation need to win to justify the golden generation tag that they have carried for 10 years. Now, what's the possibility of this happening? Find out in the Daily Monitor this morning.
And the New Vision Sport also gives you a story on Nachivubo ground near completion. Now, they give you an overview of Nachivubo Stadium, which is under reconstruction. But also more on that is why clubs need solid fan base. That is also being given out for you today morning in New Vision Sport. But also give you more of the stories concerning the golfers and, of course, more on the varsity games. Get yourself a copy and get more of those stories on sports. You also look at actually the victorious day for Martyrs and Queens. Well, it seems like they also give you a table on Women's Super League with Martyrs leading on with the table and Macquarie as well. And also more of the inside story, build that key fan base. Now that is from some of the, personalities that have been really good with netball and National Basketball League, giving you some of the insights on what you can do, especially to raise your fan base, which is quite important, especially with sports.
Well, the traffic this morning, looking at well, before we get into the traffic situation on the roads, taking you through the Daily Nation, ESCC goes for former Moi aid in 2.5 billion Kenyan shillings case. And man who owns part of Mombasa Airport runway. And looking at still more stories of how the haggling that led to the rejection of Kalonzo by MPs. That full story is also there. So make sure you grab yourself the Daily Nation to catch up on those and many, many more over there in the Daily Nation. Switching to our roads this morning, looking at areas of Kawempe division. Kawempe is quite very busy. Most of the roads are already heavy with the traffic as I speak right now. And maybe just to start off from areas of Tula Road. Now, Tula Road this morning, I could say that the traffic is already building up over there, and it's already the road is already decorated in orange and red, clearly showing you that it's going to be quite a very very long morning for the people who use this very specific road. Looking at Erisa Road, well, it's not any different. I must say the traffic is also building up over there. And as you're accessing Kalere roundabout, you should be expecting again quite a lot of traffic. As you see, there is a Kalere market over here. This is quite a very busy place. We have many pedestrians, we have many cars, we have many cyclists. So you need to be ready for that as you're making your way to town via Nsoba. Now, looking at again this part of the road, I could say that it's quite a free one as you're trying to get all the way to Chebando. Chebando Chisalo Salo Road, on the other hand, is very heavy with the traffic. Over here showing you, we do have cars coming in from this side of Mukalazi Road. We also have cars that are coming in from Moyo Close. So do expect the traffic there. It will not make your journey quite a smooth one. And continuing all the way to Bukoto Chisalo Salo Road, the same story. So the traffic over there should be expected. It's going to be quite a very hectic morning and a very busy one at that. If this is your usual road every day, well, I must say that you need to brace yourself for all that heavy traffic. Well, that's it from the traffic updates this morning. I will now leave you to Mollen to give you a more detailed story when it comes to climate and weather. And probably she'll be pointing us to what we should be expecting as the day goes by. Will it be raining? Will it be cloudy? Will it be shining? That's for her to let us know. Good morning. I am Philomena Mastiko.
Well, thank you very much, Philomena. Well, as to whether it will be raining or shining, I'll say this. We have some good news. After a couple of days with mostly sunny weather, it looks like we might have a pickup of wet weather conditions across several places, but we shall find out that later in our forecast. First, let's take a look at what is happening across the world. Now, we continue to get bad news from a tropical cyclone across Bangladesh that has now claimed a lot of property and, of course, with loss of lives. Now, this is after a couple of days with heavy rains and strong winds across the area after cyclone lashes Bangladesh, killing 9 people so far and flooding low-lying areas. Now, it looks like most of the houses were also destroyed, uprooting trees and disrupting roads. Power and communication links have been cut, according to the local officials. Now, as of yesterday, the death toll stands at 9, but also local authorities are saying there could be more, as there is still rescue on ground and, of course, trying to ascertain how much is the extent of the damage. Now, it looks like we're still having more news of extreme weather in terms of flooding, and this is just coming in from Bangladesh. But also Nigeria has been dealing with a lot of this flooding. Now, for the whole month, they have been reporting flooding areas with, at least now the report stands at over 300 people dying from most of these floods. Now, they are still vulnerable, and of course we've seen now that humanitarian organizations are coming in, UN agencies, to make sure that they help, especially with resettlement. But most of the homes are still underwater, and they're predicting that this could only be getting worse because the rainy season still stands, actually meaning that they're seeing the worst of the worst. But also what is coming through is that as we head for UN summit, most of the goals that were set across to help vulnerable communities, at least countries should be picking up and helping communities right now, especially with Nigeria crying for help and seeking for more intervention when it comes to dealing with these extreme weather events that are related to climate change. But also we're looking at more of the pledges that have been done in terms of what is supposed to be done to curb the climate change effect or the crisis. But now all our eyes are on COP27. Now, this is a UN summit that is due to take place in Egypt next month. Well, the anticipation is that as world leaders from over 192 countries convene together, they will be coming up with now a target to limit global warming, that is limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. But what we also know is that most of the pledges that have been done have not been, that were committed in the last COP, which is COP26, were not done and up to now. So now the question is, as we head towards the Egypt COP27 summit, what can be done, and of course what are the voices that are coming across now? It is highly anticipated that this will come up with the first ever agreement that will be limiting also the temperature rises, but also the expectation is that they will come up with an accord so that countries do reduce investments when it comes to fossil fuels. That is some of the things that I expect. So those are some of the things that I expected from COP27, but also phasing out completely of use of coal. That is one of the things that is also expected, and also for world leaders to refocus away from the Russia-Ukraine war onto the climate crisis. How realistic is that? That is one that we're about to find out just as we count down towards COP27. But also, you look at when it comes to COP15. Now, this is one of the conference of parties also looking at biodiversity and also more on loss and damage. They're also coming out with a conference in December. They're talking about climate change being related to loss of biodiversity. And they're taking it to the streets saying, yes, you're talking about COP27, but we also have another conference of parties that is going to be looking at biodiversity. And activists did take it to the streets saying, look, we need action, because the determination, the plans that come out of COP27 very much matter what will be discussed in December, and they are demanding for climate justice now. That is something that is very intriguing to see young people actually coming out to say, look, you, the leaders, yes, we acknowledge that, we admit that, but the decisions that you're coming up with right now do affect our future. We are the future of this, so you better make good and make sure that our planet is safe, because what is coming out is clearly all in terms of extreme weather events. People are dying, property being destroyed, loss and damage everywhere because of the decisions that are made by top leaders. And sometimes it doesn't represent what these activists are saying. Well, and away from that, we also want to take a look at what is happening home. Like I mentioned, a little bit of good news. We see rain starting to develop across the country, across several places for this morning, contrary to what we had yesterday, with most places starting off with mostly intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions. But this morning, we could be looking at much more of rainy conditions coming across, especially for areas around Lake Victoria. We also do have some areas also within southwestern Uganda that are expected to have those rains. And as we speak right now, we are starting to see rains across midwestern Uganda, parts of Masindi already having those rains. And of course, you also look at the eastern side of Central, where we have areas of Ruwero, Woblenzi. We're looking at a rainy system headed your way. Do prepare for those rains. Also for areas around Kampala, Tororo, Jinja, we could be looking at most of those wet weather activities for this morning. But again, we're starting off with quite a pretty sunny morning for Karamoja, northern Uganda, and Soroti. You're likely to be dealing with that for much of today morning. We'll go ahead and take a look at the forecast that is coming in from the Uganda National Meteorological Authority. Also look at the temperatures that we do expect for today. Starting off with southwestern Uganda, we're looking at also isolated rains expected to be there across several places, with a chilly morning at 25 degrees. Mount Elgon Highlands, that is where we have Mbale, Bududa, Buko and Sironko. We're forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine, but that will also be mixed with rainy conditions for this morning across several places, starting off with a chilly 25 degrees. Across the eastern side of Central, we already have those rains coming in towards the area. We're talking about Ruwero, Woblenzi, Bururi, Nakaseke, and that is also expected to start off quite warm at 27 degrees centigrade. Central northern Uganda, across Gulu, Kitgum, Padel, Adjumani, we do expect rains to come your way as the morning progresses, and most of that will be crossing over into the afternoon, but also still a warm morning for you at 28 degrees centigrade. The central parts of Lake Victoria, that is where we have Mokono, Kampala, Entebbe, Wakiso. We do have those rains in the forecast, and we're seeing already cloudy conditions starting to develop, especially for those areas around Lake Victoria, starting off with a pleasant 26 degrees centigrade, and we do expect that system to cross over into the afternoon now for most areas, also towards the western half of Lake Victoria Basin. We're talking about Masaka, Rengo, Kalisizo. You could be looking at a similar system headed your way, bringing in rains later in the morning. Also for areas of Mubende, we could be looking at those rains again for this morning. Hoima, Masindi, those rains are already on your way. Fort Poto, you could be looking at much more of wet weather activities for today. That takes in also much of the western sector, meaning that northwestern Uganda across West Nile, we could be looking at rainy conditions also later later as the day progresses. But the Karamoja region remains dry, and mostly areas within the eastern part of the country will also be having similar weather later in the afternoon. Well, that is it in terms of weather updates. I want to wish you a wonderful day.
This is Good Morning Uganda. A logical, deeper conversation.
How many teachers in Uganda did you consult? But there's a mistake we are making. Which is good.
Which is good.
Which is good.
Which is good.
We went to this school, we ran to Western, we ran to Northern, we ran, then you come.
Isn't that an achievement?
Objective and non-partisan.
Honorable Minister, there were a number of points. I want to start with you.
Straight from the hearts of open-minded men and women.
Money tends to move faster at night. So when people are not counting,
don't take it for granted.
Candid and authentic.
Because Uganda is not Thailand.
That's not correct, and we should stop that kind of mentality. So what I'm saying
is
that's
a trick question. Don't answer.
I'm not getting I'm not getting into that.
Tell him you speak low.
I think that's where we are beginning to have a problem.
I think what is going to kill the parish model are all the misconceptions on how it's supposed to run.
I know that the Prime Minister is listening.
Behind the headlines.
Charles, let us agree. We liberalized the economy.
We are several nations put it together.
Why don't you appreciate that?
What if it fails? I'm happy and he's a good lawyer because I mean he's not in power.
The parish development committee is functional. It is there. That there is a parish chief, that the beneficiary is doing.
So we look at expenditure, we don't look at revenue, and that is the challenge we are giving them from Minister of Finance.
Your fountain of new knowledge, flowing into the mass body of knowledge.
First get the knowledge of Bukedia, how they want to be modernized.
Every Wednesday, 10 p.m. on your public broadcaster.
You return money to the treasury, which is meant for the people.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.